We're officially recording. Dude,
Awesome.
thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. This is fantastic. I kind of just wanted to focus in on your work, everything that you're currently doing, and how you got here. So,
Sure. Awesome. Thanks for having me. I know we've talked once before, not on a podcast or not recorded.
right.
And I know we had a great conversation and stuff. So hopefully we can duplicate at least some of the good stuff that we talked about then.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, dude, you're a record producer. You're a sound engineer.
Yeah.
You're a musician and a songwriter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do a lot of stuff. You wear a lot of hats. What does that look like for you day to day?
I mean, all those roles, they're all different, and they all kind of, for me, they all blur together. Yes, there are guys that are just sound engineers, or just songwriters, or just mixers, etc., etc. But for me, how I learned music and how I was kind of, how I came up in music was kind of just learning how to do a little bit of everything. So for me, at a certain point, it kind of became possible for me to separate what all those things are. I mean, yes, production and engineering is more focused on the recording, and songwriting is obviously about the songwriting and stuff. But to me, they go hand in hand together so closely. And you can't make a good production without a good song, and at the same time, and an awesome production can elevate an awesome song and take it to a whole other level. So, I can never not, even when when I'm songwriting, I'm already thinking about, how's it going to sound, not
Yeah.
just not just what am I saying and what are the chords or whatever. I'm thinking like, what kind of sounds are going to be in there, what kind of picture, what kind of colors am I going to use to paint this picture once I've sketched it.
Yeah, dude, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess before I ask any of these further questions, is it
Yeah.
safe to assume that you love what you're doing?
Yeah, totally. I absolutely love what I do. I mean, I think every single person, has days they don't love what they do, but
Sure.
as a whole, I love what I do. I'm always so aware of how lucky I am to be able to, I guess, explore my creativity for a living. And even if sometimes that's, through other people, or for other people and stuff, it's just such a fun thing to be able to do. And to be able to share with people, not just the music itself, but the actual process. And I work with so many clients, and I've worked with, I'm sure, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. I don't,
Yeah.
if I counted, I can't even remember everything I've done in my life. But that process when you're in the studio, and I'm here, and I got usually someone sitting in a chair or something behind me, right? And we just talking about music and exploring emotions and feelings and each other's experiences. And it's not just like, it's not just it's like I said, it's not just instruments, and it's not just the craft. It's kind of like a shared experience. And I like that. I kind of like, there's a little bit of like a psychology, almost like I'm a psychologist for people sometimes too. Kind of trying to get, break them down a little bit, get in their heads, see what they're all
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
help them find, their focus within that. And, maybe they don't even know in the beginning. And through that process, they end up sort of articulating, parts of their identity and stuff. And that's just, and through the process too, I do the same. When you're writing a lyric, or let's say you got a choice between a few different lyrics for a line, you realize like what you don't want to say as a person, or what you would say as a person. And it's different for everybody. What I would say or not say in a song is different than what some of my clients would say or not say in a song and stuff. So it's fun. It's fun to explore that and kind of just, see the variety of perspectives. And, it's just, to me, it's really cool. And anytime I have a client, I approach it like, we're not just writing a song. I'm here to like sort of help you figure out, where you want to go and what you want to do and who you want to be, and all that. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, probably more than picking up an actual guitar most days.
That's fucking rad, dude. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you love doing what you're doing, because the rest of these questions would have sucked if you.
Yeah.
um, so I mean, just kind of to rattle off a few of the people you've worked with. You've said you've worked with, God, do you know how many bands you've worked with off the top of your head?
No, no, I'd have no idea. I mean, there was a few years in a row where even just as a mixer, I was mixing like 200 or 300 songs a year.
Oh my God.
So so like there's things I'll hear randomly, and then I'll be like, that sounds familiar. They'll be like, oh yeah, I did that. Like I can kind of tell, like, by this, the sound of my snare drum or something like that. If it's me or not. But no, I mean it's certainly in the hundreds. I mean, I'm only 35, but I've been I guess working professionally in some capacity since I was about 16, maybe. So
Damn, dude.
15, 16. So
That's fucking right. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I've been using Pro Tools and engineering for 20 years.
that's awesome. So I mean, I know you've worked with In This Moment.
Sure. Yeah. So some of the marquee bands, let's say, that people may or may not know. Rock music is kind of an interesting thing because if you don't listen to it, it's like a foreign world.
Yeah.
You can be the biggest rock star, and if people don't listen to rock music, they're like, I have no idea who you are. I'm sorry. Whereas you can not listen to pop music and still know who, like, Lady Gaga is or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that. But yeah, some of the biggest bands I've worked with are In This Moment, who I absolutely love working with, Five Finger Death Punch, Papa Roach, Disturbed, Bad Wolves, Corey Marks. He's a newer country artist we've been working with. Skillet. Yeah, I mean, I've had just some tremendous opportunities, and those are some of the bigger ones that I have. Like, I remember them because I walk by the plaques every day and I see those same names. But in between those, there's hundreds of things. For every one thing there's probably literally 100 other songs that I've done with different bands that. Even if you do listen to rock music, you may not know, or you might know if you're more into deeper into stuff. But yeah, totally.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I pulled up your Wikipedia page right before we hopped on here, and I saw Ozzy Osbourne's name as well as Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
Both,
yeah.
I actually, I think you can know.
Ozzy Osbourne is actually the first person I ever wrote a rock song for.
Wow.
So so until that point, I never got, like, what we'd say in the business, a rock cut, let's say. I had never gotten a rock cut till then, and that was the first time I had written something that then another rock artist did. So that was definitely my entry point. It's funny because it seemed like that, on the surface, it seemed like such a big thing, and it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's pretty cool to be able to do that and hear Ozzy's voice on something that I started writing in my bedroom, on my acoustic guitar or something, right? But
yeah,
at the same time, it was also a little eye opening in a sense that once it came out, you realize, like, nobody reads credits, nobody knows I did this.
Yeah.
And what happens all the time is very often writing credits and things can get left off of records too. Sometimes accidentally, sometimes intentionally. In that case, I was accidentally left off the original pressing of the credits. So, I day one, the album comes out and I'm all excited. I drive to Walmart to go get it, and I unwrap it in the parking lot and take the booklet out and open it up, man. And I'm nowhere to be found, right?
That would feel like a gut punch
for a song I wrote. And it was just, it was one of those things where, the producer of that record was my father, who produced the rest of the record. And we both have the same, we have the same initials, basically, right? Our first name, his name's Kevin, my name's Kane. So we're both Kane Churko. And they thought it was a misprint that there was two Kane Churkos in the lyrics. So they took who were the graphics person or something took that off. And so there's moments like that, like, even when it should be on one hand at that time, at that day, that was like the biggest thing I'd ever done in my life. And then you're like, wow, this could like, no one would know this existed unless I like, talked about it.
Yeah, no, that's insane, dude. So what you're saying is it's your dad's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Like who do I go get, who do I go get angry at, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it's like obviously he didn't do it intentionally, and it just happens. I mean, sometimes bands don't like to put that stuff on the records, whether they want things to be more mysterious or
Sure.
or in some cases, I think from a fan perspective, or I don't know if it's always true, but I think people make the argument that from a fan perspective, people like to buy into the mythology, and they like to think that their favorite artists are doing 100% of everything, and they're there pouring over poetry and just their entire life and putting it into a song and stuff like that. And the reality is, it's kind of like really any other profession. There's professionals in the mix, and they're helping people, and you're working with people. And I don't think that, from my point of view, and maybe that's because I'm technically, I guess, on the wrong side of it, working with someone or collaborating with someone or calling in a quote unquote pro, I don't think that cheapens it, in my opinion. I think maybe in some cases it does, if that pro doesn't function from a point of view of sincerity and really wanting to go deeper with things. And when people call me, I don't think they're just calling me to like make their stuff catchy. I think they're calling me to help explore the caves of their own artistry, and I just happen to be a good explorer, or whatever. Yeah. I just happen to have a good light and some good equipment to dig around in the tunnels with, right? So my point of view is a professional can really help bring the best out of an artist, and I don't think fans should be worried if they see that their favorite artist is writing with somebody else or working with some big time guy or anything like that. I think that should be an exciting thing, and I'd like to see that's something we're seeing more now of. I think is always people making the argument for credits to be more visible, for there to be more standards in relation to what has to appear and what should appear, whether it's in a Spotify credit or these days or physical booklet. And there is standards like that in the movie industry and stuff. Like they have to say certain things, and they have to say who directed it right before the movie starts and all that kind of stuff. And like those are actual like almost like laws within that world, and we don't really have that. It's kind of whatever you want to throw on and whatever you want to keep off, you can. So my perspective is, since the beginning of music, we've all probably been lied to about how things have actually happened on our favorite records by our favorite artists. And I would probably say some of our favorite artists don't even know what actually happened on their own records.
I actually saw a video of yours semi recently about they were missing some vocals or something like that, and you were actually able to fill those on your own, like doing like background vocals or something like that. So to artists not knowing what's going on, like there's just stuff that has to be filled, and if they don't have the time in the studio, then that has to be taken care of somehow, right?
Yeah, not just out of a lack of time or cutting corners, but I think everyone has different skills too. So you can be an amazing songwriter, an amazing vocalist. That doesn't mean you know how to write harmonies for your vocal harmonies for your song, or without it maybe without it taking a really long time, or without hitting wrong notes along the way that shouldn't be there, and all that kind of stuff. So I think in my my role sometimes is to sort of be the teacher and kind of grade people's work and show them what they got wrong, and if they be like, oh, I see what you're trying to do, but this is how you spell that word, and this is how this is this is these three notes can't go on top of each other because they're all side by side, and like and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I'm a guy that I do whatever it takes for whatever I'm hired for. If I got to play an instrument, if I have to sing background vocals, I mean, lots of my records I'm singing background vocals on. I probably secretly just enjoy that process. It's fun for me to it's still fun for me to kind of get on a microphone and like get inside the track, in a way, not just be observing it. And and I like that. It's kind of spontaneous, allows me to explore things too. I'm not it, as long as I've been doing this, I'm not super theory trained really, when it comes to music and stuff. I can't like technically read or write music, um, and I don't know like every musical rule perfectly in my head. Most of what I know is from trial and error, and just kind of figuring out what the wrong answers are over time and staying away from those. Um, so I have to kind of jam on something sometimes and just sort of explore it, and like it's still kind of a little bit more of an instinct feeling thing to me than I think it is purely technical.
That makes sense. And obviously it comes with time. But so you've been doing this for a minute. I mean, you mentioned earlier you did that song in your teens in your bedroom with an acoustic guitar.
I wasn't quite my teens, but close. I was probably about like 20 or 21 or something, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
very young. When did you
Yeah.
when did you get started? What did that whole thing look like? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. You know what? Really, really just, there's a couple things. I mean, the obvious thing for an outsider that doesn't know my backstory would be my family. And my dad grew up in a family band called Churko in Canada, and they were like a Canadian Partridge Family.
Nice.
My dad played drums. My uncle played guitar. My aunt sang and played keys, and my grandma played bass, and my grandpa played guitar, and
That's
all that.
so rad. I love that.
And yeah, no, and my grandma's like 78, and she still plays in 3 bands.
That's amazing.
And my grandpa became a music teacher, and he taught music his whole life. And my dad became obviously a professional producer. We do the same thing essentially, and both separately and together. And my uncle, he plays in Shania Twain's band for like the last 20 or so years, and has played with Kelly Clarkson and the Backstreet Boys and stuff. And so they all became kind of professional musicians in a certain sense, let's say. So I grew up around music, and it was always just kind of there. It was so normal and so present that I kind of almost didn't even realize how, not necessarily how special, but in some ways maybe how not how special, but how also weird it was that I was just around it all the time. I was in the tour van. I was, as a toddler, I'm growing up in hotels while they play, cover gigs in the bar next door and stuff like that. Yeah. And that was just normal. And everyone I knew in my life, they just wrote songs, and I just knew like, oh, that's just what people do. Like people just like, everyone just writes songs, right? Yeah. So that's how it felt to me, right? But so because of that, I think too, even my interest in it, it's not like my interest in it really stood out early on to anybody else, but I think I was just naturally drawn to it. And there's a couple, memories that I have that to me are really early indicators that I would end up doing what I do now. One of those is I loved how things sounded, and I have like a cassette from when I'm like 2 years old, hearing myself on a microphone for the first time, and recording my voice. And I think they're putting, my dad was putting me through like a pitch changer and putting like echo and reverb on it, and like putting effects on your voice. And you could just tell listening to this cassette that like I'm just so into like what I'm hearing, and like, wow, this is like, whoa, that's my voice. Wow, now I sound like super low, and I'm just this little kid, whatever, right? And that's like 2-3 years old. Like basically, as soon as I could talk, like yeah, immediately, like obviously, I liked hearing stuff. And then probably when I was about maybe 8 or 9, even or maybe a little, maybe 9 or 10. My sister had like a Fisher Price tape recorder with the microphone cable attached to it.
Yeah.
And on the telephone cord or whatever. And, I realized that some cassettes like would come out, if they were like a single or something, the B-side on that cassette would sometimes be an instrumental of the song. I think I had like Michael Jackson, Black or White, and then on the other side there was an instrumental of it, right? And I realized, wow, I could put that in one cassette deck, like one boom box, and play it out the speakers of that, and then set this Fisher Price recorder up next to that and like sing my own words on top of that song. And without even like anyone telling me to do that, or probably even knowing I was doing that, I would like listen and be like, I want to make new words for this song. I want to change this melody. I feel like this other vocal thing should go here instead. And just naturally, like it clearly stimulates my mind to work on music. And I've just learned that about myself, that it's just, I like solving those riddles and I like thinking in those terms. And, you know, flash forward in grade maybe 5 or 6 when the teacher's, you know, trying to get us to define what we want to be. At the time I was in love with the Beatles, and, you know, you always hear about Lennon and McCartney being songwriters. And I was like, I want to be like Lennon and McCartney. I want to be a songwriter. And that's what I wrote in my book, grade 5, grade 6. I want to be, I want to be a songwriter. And never, even at that time, I didn't play an instrument even at that time. I mean, I didn't learn how to play guitar till I was almost a teenager, and stuff. But I always like singing things in my head. I like writing things down, little poems. You know, I can remember playing with my toys and just singing things to myself, and like repetitive things. Like I wasn't just like babbling. I was like writing courses. You know, like it satisfied my mind to hear like something catchy and repetitive, and like to come up with it and stuff. So, and then to be able to share it in the end and be like, hey, here's this thing that I did, and show it to someone. So for me, it just kind of, I've just been pulling on that thread my whole life. And you know, the deeper I got with it, the you know, the more in love with it I became. But it's still kind of the same. It's the same motivation for me as it's kind of always been. I just like creating things, and I like recording things, and I like being able to press play at the end of the day and hear them back. And, you know, nothing else. I've at least found nothing else yet that kind of gives me the full sense of satisfaction and stimulation that music does.
Yeah, dude. No, that makes sense. So, I mean, you've obviously been doing that for a while as well, the songwriting aspect of it. Are you mostly writing songs for other bands? Like, do you have any solo stuff?
Yeah, you know, I do. I've, you know, that's really honestly where it, as far as my professional life, but the professional part of my music making started was eventually I, you know, made my own music. I started out, you know, it's funny. I always just made songs, and you know, I've had Pro Tools now for 20 years. So I started like recording demos when I was, you know, 14, 15. So I have like
Awesome.
so many recordings, but I never started it being like, I want to be in a band. I was always like, I want to be a songwriter, or I want to like make music, but I was never like, I want to be a performer, or I want to be in a band. So I just made songs, and eventually with the internet, I always loved like building websites early on and stuff. So I was like, let me just put my songs up there. But I wasn't even like selling them. I wasn't trying to play shows. I wasn't trying to put a band together. I was just like, let me just put these songs somewhere. So I did that, and through that, I actually ended up meeting a you know, another kid basically ended up reaching out to me and saying, hey, I love your songs. Can I hire you to do songs for me and write some songs like your songs for me? At that time, I was maybe like 17 or something. And, you know, it was like, hell yeah, I get to get paid to do what I'm already doing for free. So, yeah. so, you know, I took that gig, and that's probably in a sense my first gig doing what I had been doing for myself for anybody else. And I realized I enjoyed that just as much. Now, what kind of happened out of that is that kid that met me on the internet ended up being a little bit of a sociopath, and kind of sort of ended up being impersonating me, basically. Okay. He decided eventually that he liked all of my songs and my voice better than his own. So he was just going to take all my songs that I'd put on my website and start claiming them as his own.
What?
So he was sending these songs out to labels and managers, and labels were flying him around and meeting with him and trying to sign him and all that stuff. And at the time, you know, this kind of like went on for almost a couple of years, and it was the difficulty of the situation was we were both minors, so you know, there was kind of nothing I could do to make him stop without like taken his family to court or something like that. And
Sure.
like, it was just kind of just, there was just sort of dead. Everything we explored was kind of a dead end. And I eventually, when I was 19, I got an opportunity to go work in Dubai as a sound engineer doing English radio commercials. And I was only out there probably like 5 or 6 weeks when I got a phone call from a manager in LA saying, hey, Kane, I've been working with this guy for like the last 6 months. I've almost got him a record deal, and I've almost got him a publishing deal. And I got people that want to collaborate on the songs with him and stuff. And he just sent me an email and confessed that all his material is actually you.
Oh
And he's like, I've just been trying to track down who the actual artist of this music is. And he's like, where are you right now? I'm like, I'm in Dubai. But he was basically, he was basically like, well, I think I can get you a record deal, and I think I can get you, I think I can like represent you and help you build a career. So like, leave Dubai. And so I'd taken this job, like I was supposed to be there at least a year, and I told them like week 5 or 6 then that I got this opportunity, and they're like, just go. So I came back to the States. Life brought me immediately back, and that began the process of being an artist. I'd never actually embraced being an artist kind of until then. So that's when I became Mr. Kane. Let's say, started putting out songs on whatever iTunes and stuff, and started shopping project, getting flown around by the record labels, doing kind of doing that circuit, trying to put bands together. One band turned into another, and that's how I learned how to produce songs and do everything myself. I didn't have someone to do, I didn't have someone I could pay, and I didn't have money to pay someone. So it became, well, how do I play everything? How do I record everything? How do I sing everything? And once I could do that for me, I could kind of do it for anybody else. It's actually easier doing it for other people, because I don't have to do literally everything. I just got to I just got to fill in whatever holes need to be filled in, but I don't have to, be responsible for every single note. Right. But
yeah.
So just, doing my own band thing, it brought other people in. And while I was doing that, I started, producing, mixing, engineering songs for other people. And until I guess I became a better writer. And I think my dad was the one that always maybe most encouraged that. And, but he never really it's not like he ever gave me an opportunity. He was always kind of like, here's the one piece of knowledge at a time. And then eventually got to the point of like, okay, this idea is good enough for Ozzy. And he needed more Ozzy ideas. It's like he had already written 2 records with him, and they're kind of, towards the end, and both burnt out themselves. And that's when just, things kind of opened up. And I sort of, in that sense, kind of started being like a pinch hitter, or something for some of Dad's projects, where, when he'd reach the end and, everyone's just over it and they still need to do 2 more songs, and, then it's like, hey, Kane, what do you got?
Yeah.
Or something. And I just managed to, one thing led to the next. I did the Ozzy song. I think the next cut I got was like the 5 Finger Death Punch song, and that song became a big song. It was at least, it went number 2, I think, on the rock charts. Remember Everything by 5 Finger Death Punch. And that just started to establish myself actually as my own entity, and as like, not just, I was already helping Dad on his projects, doing editing and timing instruments and all that kind of stuff, and helping him record people. But that all of a sudden gave me like an identity as a writer, and some credibility, where like, okay, he's, he didn't just write a song for Joe Blow down the street. He wrote, the last 2 rock songs that he wrote were for Ozzy Osbourne and 5 Finger Death Punch. So yeah, it at least gave people some trust, I guess, to allow me to pitch them things and stuff, and just started doing that. And pretty soon my bands came to a screeching halt, and I just got so busy making music for other people, and time just flew by. So yeah.
That's nuts. So, I mean, you kind of got to where you are today, not necessarily through the whole hustle mindset or mentality, but it was just by consistently doing your thing. And then you were pulled by all these other people.
I think a big part of success for anything is really kind of trying to be reactive. And in a lot of ways, I never kind of knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew kind of what I was capable of, let's say. And I knew I liked to kind of push my own limits. You know, even like what I do now, like when I work with a band nowadays, most of the time I'm co-writing the song, recording, engineering, producing, mixing, and mastering the song. So I'm generally the only person working on the song from beginning to end, other than the band themselves. And that's becoming more commonplace now. But even when I started, it was very like, oh, you can't do all those roles at once. Like the way it works is one guy does this, and then they hand it to this guy, and then they hand it to this guy. And you can't cut all those guys out of the process. And how can the same guy writing the song be the same guy mixing the song, and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think there was always this mentality of like, no matter how good one guy could get it, the next professional guy could do it better, kind of thing. So that's changed over time. And I think, I like to think at least that part of people like us, not us specifically, but people like Dan and I who have kind of championed like, no, you can be one guy in a room at a computer and make a whole album. And
absolutely.
I think I already saw that with other genres of music, but rock music never functioned like that. So it was always like, oh, you're in a rock band, you can't plug anything into a computer. Computers aren't rock and roll, right? And now flash forward, 10, 15 years, and it doesn't really matter. And I don't think kids think of it like that. And it's sort of it's almost, you can't make any current rock and roll without a computer.
I know. So. It's funny. Like, I still don't know if black metal as a genre has gotten past the little play things that you were using with the cord and the microphone when you were a kid. As far as their sound equipment. But you made a good point. You said a big part of success is being reactive. Actually, before I get into that, you would consider yourself a successful person in what you're doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I
would.
Very much.
No, I would. And I don't. And when I say it's even successful, it's like, I want to be careful with that verbiage because
sure.
Like, look at me, I'm successful, right?
No.
But I get to do what I love for a living.
Yeah.
I get to do what I love for a living, and I have opportunities that just kind of at this point in life, to me feel like they just land in front of me, and I'm just can't. I'm so lucky for those ones. So
yeah,
life is surreal. When like just last week I walk into the hallway and Gene Simmons is there getting a tour of our studio, and that's just like Kiss is the first band I ever saw live. So it's just like there's moments like that are still just like mind blowing. And
absolutely.
And most of all, I think where I'm at now, I'm relatively pretty happy. I'm pretty I'm finding a balance, and I'm satisfied in what I do, and it feeds me and my family. So that's what success is to me, I guess. But sorry, I started going to tangents.
No. That was good. I think that success is one of those like vague terms that almost needs to be personally defined, because what it is to one person is entirely different than what it is to another person. But I think it's pretty consistent that if you're getting to do what you love daily, of course there's going to be those days that are just shit, but you're still getting to do what you love on a regular basis. And that's what I think a lot of people are at least hunting for when it comes to success as a term. But did you have, was there like one of those I've made it moments?
I'm sure there was. I'm trying to think of a good one here. I mean, the one that's some of the immediate things that stand out the most to me was definitely that Five Finger Death Punch song, because that was the first time I got to see something on a chart, like a real Billboard chart, and see it next to other things too. Like it's like, oh, like I'm number 2 and Korn's number 3, and fucking Disturbed's number 4, and like wow, I'm making things.
Yeah.
Competing in that same space neck and neck with those people, and that was pretty exciting. I think there's certain moments where you meet certain people, and I don't get starstruck that often. I don't think even when I do get starstruck, maybe not how some people do, but I think, you know, some things are just surreal to me, right? Like if it's working with a band that I maybe grew up listening to or something, like when I got the Papa Roach gig, like I remember being 14, listening to Papa Roach.
Yeah.
And you know, to think that, wow, okay, in 2 weeks now, these guys are supposed to show up in my studio, and I'm supposed to make a record for for them.
14-year-old kid comes back out a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, when I had a meeting once with Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit about doing some music, and that was same thing. I mean, those are some of the first albums I ever bought, and I'm like, wow, I'm like here, like sitting in Fred Durst's house, like having a conversation with him, listening to music. Like, this is just bizarre. It's like it's weird. I met Bob Dylan and worked with him for a day. And it's just like things like that to me I think are really crazy, and just sort of like it doesn't even feel real. And those are the moments you always feel that maybe still a little bit of imposter syndrome and stuff too, and you're just like,
sure,
how is like in my head I'm still 14-year-old Kane that listened to Limp Bizkit, but in that setting I'm producer guy that they're interviewing to see if I can make their next record or whatever, right? And stuff. So it's a weird role to play, and it's those. I think seeing a band for the first, like seeing the first time I was able to see a band perform a song that I did, in front of like a lot of people, where you're standing in. I mean, the first big one for me is probably like 2,000 people, but now I've been in crowds where there's 10,000 people or more, and you're just like, wow, this whole place is singing along to this song that like. They have no idea, I've been part of it, and I get to just stand there and enjoy the show, enjoy the thing, and just like, songwriting to me and music, a lot of it is really just like a form of manifestation. And, there's an aspect of when I'm then there enjoying it, and it's like, wow, like this was just like some sort of chemical in my brain at some point, and now it's an experience that this whole room is sharing. And like it kind of blows your mind, like it blows my mind at least, and then I think that's what's like kind of just still sort of trippy to me. Like, so many things I do just start with a conversation, or they start with one line, or they start with something my client says when they're telling me about what they did the week before. And it's just crazy that like you can turn that into an actual viable thing that can last potentially forever, and can be experienced and shared forever. And you're kind of like, it's sort of this alchemical process of like just distilling down your thoughts and feelings and experiences into this thing that then still, like, what is a song? It's not a physical thing. I can't hold a song in my hand. I can play a song, but what is it other than this weird like distilled version of all the manifestation that kind of went into it? And I that's to me still like the most mysterious, interesting things about music.
Yeah, that's so rad. It's funny, while you were saying that, that quote from Aleister Crowley popped into my head. He defines magic as like the science or act of causing change to occur with conformity of thine will, or
something
like that. And it's like that's exactly what a song can do. Like it is such a magical process. It's fucking trippy.
It is. I mean, it's like it's a state. I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, it's that even a song itself is almost like a room or a temple. Even like you can kind of like, it can just you can kind of just seat yourself inside of it, and your experience, you're experiencing it in like every direction and dimension. And it's just
That's so cool. Okay, but I did want to double back to this. So you said a big part of success is being reactive. Care to expand on that a little more?
Yeah. When I started, or when I started getting work, not everything that came my way was a dream opportunity. You know, I didn't, you know, yes, Ozzy was my first rock, but I was doing lots of other work in that, and I'd already been working for a while. And, you know, maybe the average client that was coming to me was just some guy that wanted to pay for his daughter to do a song, or, you know, someone's church group needs to record something, or, you know, some guy needs a remix of something. And, you know, I'm working on different kinds of genres that I don't necessarily listen to, maybe don't even like, maybe working with people that aren't always, you know, professional, a fully seasoned pro, let's say. And I've worked with people that are probably literally tone deaf sometimes, you know, and you know, all sorts of people and circumstances and situations that aren't always ideal, let's say, or let's say things you would be like, oh, that's what I want to do. That's the client that I want. But I kind of approached music of like, you know, really going back to, I guess, my essence of what I wanted, you know, it's one of the only ways I know how to help people. So I approached it like, let me try to say yes to everything I can. Let me try to help people. Every person that's going to come and ask for my help and want to pay for my help, let me try to help them, whether or not, you know, kind of with no judgment, really, and just do the best I can to do that. So, you know, I remember the first year, like, where I consciously did that. Like, it was a conscious thing where I was like, I'm going to say yes to every single thing that comes my way this year, and I'm just going to try to do it all. And through that process, you know, I learned things that I wouldn't have learned had I not taken some of those projects that then applied to things that I actually did want to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I learned how to make the worst singer in the world sound pleasing, you know, sound listenable. And when you can do that, then it's like working with better and better people. It just gets easier and easier. Like what I do now is almost easier than ever, because I'm working with really talented, creative individuals that know what they're doing and have ideas, and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, when you're just starting out and you're just trying to get work, period, you know, it's not always that way. But it's kind of like, it's like training. It's like weightlifting, you know, and you just keep painfully, you know, trying to pick the weights up over and over again. And then finally, you know, you have a fight or something, you know, you get to do, and you realize, wow, I'm actually like stronger than I thought. And like, I've developed some places I didn't know I had. And you know, then you get confidence with it. Then you start to have even more fun with it again. And you know, it's amazing how many times, like, just doing something random, even taking something that I know, like, okay, it might not be the biggest band in the world, but maybe I see something in the band, and then I meet them and we have these great conversations, and then they recommend me to someone else and the next person. And you know, it's, you know, you don't just always have a straight line to the premier clients. You know, you kind of just try to get out on the field and, you know, hit the ball as many times as it comes your way, and hope it kind of adds up to something. And I think being reactive, you know, that's where it ties to that. And, you know, I didn't, you know, when I was a kid, I didn't listen to heavy metal, and most of my biggest things I've done now are heavy metal, would be, I guess, some brand of heavy metal, let's call it. And, you know, I would have never said, hey, I want to be a heavy metal producer when I grow up. You know, that wasn't part of my plan. That was me being reactive to where my skills fit, where I was able to help people the most, or the easiest, or where, you know, where just I found value myself. And you know, I probably wanted to be Max Martin or Dr. Luke instead of you know, heavy metal guy, or rock guy even. But you know, it just, my skill sets worked there, and I found a groove, I guess, within it. And yeah, I mean, the bands I was in were like funk pop bands and stuff like that, so they weren't anything like the music I do, you know, day to day now. So it was kind of a left turn for me into this genre of music. But, you know, I was reactive to it, and that's the opportunities that came my way. And I think the skills that I developed being in, you know, pop-ish kind of bands and stuff was what made me useful and valuable to then all these rock artists, because they weren't they weren't thinking about writing courses to the same extent that I was, and they weren't, you know, they just weren't concerned with the commerciality, the catchiness, and the symmetry, and all those things. They're just trying to like jam and rock out, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I maybe had a more refined approach day one when I made the shift to writing a rock song, and to me, it was almost like stupidly easy in the beginning. It was like some of my first writing sessions with bands was like, wow, like all I got to do is like repeat one line 3 times in a song somewhere, and it's going to be their catchiest song they've ever had. because they're not even like writing a chorus period, or they're not even, you know, thinking about that. They're calling the song something different than what the hook is and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, it was almost like, wow, they don't, you know, Rockworld doesn't know this. You just gotta do these few obvious things and it'll make your song way better.
Yeah.
And stuff. So, you know, but I wouldn't have known that even myself had I not been reactive to those situations, and had, you know, had I just been like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't work with that whatever rock band. I would have missed out on, you know, this whole awesome chapter of what has become my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you put it that way. It's I remember Napoleon Hill, he talks a little bit about like within Cosmic Habit Force about like kind of like going with the flow. So I'll get a little personal with you right now. So
Sure.
I feel like I just constantly am trying to force like full on Sisyphus rock up a hill kind of thing, and then just never see any progress. So you had mentioned like finding your skill sets and kind of like going with that flow. How do you kind of, I think I'm phrasing my question in a forceful way. How do you force that into that? But how do you discover, or what did that look like for you to kind of recognize where your skills fit so that you can move forward with the flow rather than just trying to force your way the entire time? Does that make sense? Was that too?
Yeah, I think so. You know, and I mean, music's weird and hard like that, because you can be writing great songs and still have no one heard them, you know, and still have no one around to be like, yeah, like this artist should do that song, or, you know, this, like, so you know, I think because of that, because basically you spend so much time failing until you finally succeed, you're almost by the time you succeed or start succeeding, you maybe don't even recognize it immediately, or you don't realize, like it's easier for me to say now, like kind of look back and see where like I had certain milestones, or where I got better as a writer or an artist and stuff like that. But in that moment, I'm like, I'm still doing the same thing I did yesterday. So how you can't really see, you know, you can't see your own progress. You can't see your own results. You know, I'm around people that are also, you know, that are talented in the same way, like my father and stuff. So it's, you know, again, for me, what I do was so normalized around me that like I didn't know if I was doing it well. I honestly didn't know how to do anything else. And, you know, maybe in that sense, I tried to get good at a lot of different things, and eventually all those things came together and are the reason people hire me. But in those moments, you know, in those moments of the climb, let's say, I didn't always know, and all I could kind of do was like measure it by how many emails showed up in my inbox, and how many people were, you know, calling me out of the blue. And you know, because in a certain sense, it's not like I feel like I'm writing way better songs this year than I did last year, or than I did even 10 years ago. It's like at a certain point, it's just kind of a craft, and they're just different versions of, you know, the same thing. I mean, I just make swords, and, you know, how could I tell what sword's better after I've made 10,000 swords? You know, like, it's like they all kind of fall. Most of them are all about the same thing. So I think not until I could actually see results, and results to me meant work, and meant people needing your help, I guess. And that moment, even like, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that moment I realized, like, there's people coming to me, like asking me for my help. They're not just trying to hire anybody. They're not just looking in the yellow pages and looking up studio and calling me, they've heard something in the real world that then cause them to go look up who did this thing. I want that person to work with me too, or to work on my project as well. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even remember the actual question, but
yeah, no, I mean, that does kind of answer it. It's almost like you basically answered it by saying you need a certain amount of success to be able to poke your head up and then be able to turn around and see those milestones, and so you're not going to have because all I want is those tangible, this is what I need to happen right now. Have this milestone in front of me and just be like, there's something to plant. I can put my whatever successes onto that or something like that, and then just keep moving on. But you don't really notice these things as you're going because your head is down and you're just kind of going with the flow, I guess. So,
and even while you're succeeding, that's the thing with music. Even while you're succeeding in the big picture, you're still failing every day. I can look at the arc of my year and be like, oh, this was a successful year. But if I look at any given week, there's failures spread out across across every single week. For every, even the best songs that I hand in, to a label or wherever, I'm still might get the person at the end of the chain being like, yeah, no, this isn't, we don't like this. And I might, think that's one of the best songs I fucking wrote in months or something.
Yeah.
And, or whatever. And everyone's different. So it's just a subjective thing. So, it's always like it really is. I always use the baseball reference of just, even the best baseball players in the world only hit the ball 30% of the time. And that's feels like music too. It's like, for that, you see the hits and you see the home run highlights and stuff like that. But the other 70% of the time that I'm striking out, you don't notice that.
Yeah. No, it's true.
But I do. And even if I have something big on a chart, I could have a number one in 1 week, and then during that week just be dealing with the worst feedback ever on another project or something, or just just being frustrated because I maybe can't think of something that day or something as good as I want to. And you're working against your own frustration, you're working against other people, you're working against folks that are working against you.
Yeah.
And so that's why it can be really hard to see the forest through the trees. Sometimes I think in this business.
Yeah, dude, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I think we're pushing an hour, so to kind of wrap this up a bit,
sure.
Do you think what sort of tangible advice do you have for those people who are heads down, they're in the trees, and they're just not feeling that things are moving forward at all, or they even feel like they're going backward? Yeah. What kind of advice do you have for people who are in that sort of struggle?
Yeah, I think almost really anybody that's successful at anything, or becomes a professional at whatever they do, those people really what they figured out is how to provide value. And you could call that, you can define that in many different ways. If I'm working with business people, that we could call value money. How can I make people money? And then, and if you can figure out how to make people money, then they're going to want to work with you. and it comes down to that. It's not, yes, this is an artistic thing that I do, but it's, I don't get paid for people liking a song. I get paid for people, wanting to hire me because people want to buy their song that I'm going to hopefully do. So, there's that component of it that whether it's the fan and providing them value, so they're getting something that they love and want to interact with, which then makes the label happy because they're getting paid by the fan, which makes the band happy because they're getting paid by the label.
Yep.
The label and everyone up the chain. And I think for me, that's where early on I was always like, how do I provide people with as much value as I can? And now, even if I know their project isn't going to make them a millionaire or me a millionaire or anything, even if they're just hiring me for something that they're that their high school is going to hear or something like that. I would still approach it like if they're going to hire someone else versus me, what am I doing that the other guy's not doing? And how do I do even more than what I'm hired to do? When people hire me to mix a song, sometimes I'm singing background vocals on it too, and they're not even asking me to, or something. They're just sending me the song to mix and to just to make sound what they did sound better, and then I'm sneaking other things in and I'm replaying something, and I'm kind of, in that sense, trying to provide some extra value. So when they get it back, they're like, wow, well, we paid Kane his fee. We could have paid to someone else, but that other guy wouldn't have done all this stuff. So that's even an immediate way that, whatever it is that you do, just think of it like that. Don't just be like, oh, I'm a good songwriter, so this guy should want to use my song. No, think of it like, how are you going to make that guy's life better? And if you do that, if you do that, however it is, and sometimes people come back, I work with some clients that, aren't at the top of the world too. And they still come back to me because the experience might be great, because they still know, I'm going to work harder than maybe someone else will. And I might care about it more. There's a lot of, in any business, but music too, especially, there's a lot of other, bitter people, jaded people, just people that aren't even nice personalities. Right. And I think even being a good person, is part of providing value. If someone can pay you the same price as another guy, but the other guy's an then you've won. So there's always something to be said for, don't be a dick, but that's really a way to provide value too. And I think if you're struggling, or let alone if you feel like you're falling back, maybe you've even reached a certain result and had some missteps after that, that's the time to be reactive. That's the time to look around and be like, okay, like, why did I fall back? Maybe I fell back for a reason. Maybe I wasn't quite ready to lift that weight. I just got lucky that day with one good punch, and I need to train harder, and I need to develop more skills so I can provide more value. And if I had ended at any one thing that I do, like if I just decided to become just a songwriter or just a producer or just a mixer or just an audio engineer, I don't think I would have found the success that I had. So, it's not just, sometimes you need to find something to complement what you do, to bring it to life, to make it stand out even more. It's like you're a musician, but you're a graphics guy and you're a designer, right? So you're able now to combine that aesthetic. And if someone hires you versus another random designer they find in the phone book, they're going to get your flair of cool rock edgy. I don't know how to describe your style of stuff, but you clearly have a style. And if someone's if there's a rock band looking for something, they look in the phone book and they call you and they call someone else that's just like, has some beige office somewhere and isn't in that world, they're going to hire you. And that's because of your uniqueness too. And that's because part of your identity. I think I've built, I think people have to build that. They have to become good communicators and build an identity. And lots of my clients, I think they know I'm not just helping them with music. They know, like, it's deeper than that, and I actually care about who they are as people, and I care about their life being better, and just things that then maybe other people aren't. Even their own teams, even their own labels, their own managers, aren't sometimes thinking like that. They're just trying to get their commission and make their cut off this person. And I'm kind of like, I want this person to be happy too. I want them to be successful too. And the more people I can help become successful, the more successful I am, and the more it kind of trickles back. So just approach everything with care and attention and just intention, and just keep that the focus. Don't get distracted by even the work and the thing, don't get distracted by the craft itself. Like, when figure out how to be when you're in a room with someone, whether even if you're just having a conversation with them, how do you have an awesome conversation with them? How do you leave a meeting or an interview getting someone to feel, a little bit of what you want them to feel. You want them to be excited by you. You want them to be inspired by you. You want them to be influenced by you. And it's like, yeah, in some ways that's a very vague, overarching thing, but such is life. Although I think all the best things you learn the older you get are like stupidly simple. Where you're like, I know I've heard this my whole life, but then eventually it sinks in, and
it resonates. I think
some of the people I see having the most challenges maybe aren't always as good at communicating what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They're maybe not as considerate of what the other person's thinking or feeling. Just, you got to figure out ways to become present and aware and engaging. And, yes, you got to be good at what you do, but everyone's trying to get good at the same thing as you. There's lots of people trying to get good at the same thing as you. Lots of other producers writing songs right now, trying to do what I do or compete against me. And, so what makes me, what makes me better, or, not that I'm saying I'm better, but what do I think, makes me and someone that's attractive to hire? Well, it's a care, attention, personality. Just, yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, that's fantastic. That all makes sense. I actually just took a bunch of notes on that. So that was wonderful advice. Well, dude, was there anything that you were hoping we'd talk about?
No, I mean, this went by so fast.
I know.
Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I feel like I've only talked about four things in depth. This is great. I mean, you have some great questions, and hopefully this is interesting to people. I know not everyone watching this is necessarily a musician or anything themselves, but I think there's still some cool things to take from this conversation.
Absolutely. A lot of the things that you said can apply to multiple different areas outside of even music and art, So I think it was fantastic and read, and hopefully other people will agree. But dude,
let's do this again sometime. I think we could easily pull off a part 2.
Yes, for sure we can. I've got a separate list of questions that we can get to, so we'll get into all the part 2.